Wellington Access Radio. It is I don't want to say it's like a normal, it's like a kind of neutral Saturday. I feel like it's not sunny.
Neutral.
It's like not sunny, but it's not like raining.
It's not that cloudy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's kind of just is. it's Saturday.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're in the studio today with Eddie, Nani, and Leah, and I guess Paida. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Before we quick into like our kind of general kind of main conversation for the day, I just got a couple announcements. So Tendakai has a sale on at Zanaka this afternoon and this evening. I think it's from 4 p.m. to like 9 p.m.
Zanaka on Taranaki Street.
On Taranaki Street.
Right.
And yes, and Tendakai's like he wants to make it a bit of a bit more fun, and so he's got me and who and I are going to be doing a bit of DJing. Like it's going to be, I think it's like 25 to 50% off pretty much everything. So like,
right.
Yeah, head on down to that. Like it's going to
get some clothes, get some jewelry.
I just been in India.
Today?
Yeah, just to having a look. And yeah, there's some cute stuff. I was like, come back if it's on sale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on sale tonight.
Yeah. So yeah, that's 4 p.m. till 9 p.m. So like, you could kind of like jump in your car like now and like drive and then be there and like listen to us while you're driving. Like.
And what was you had another announcement?
And the other thing is obviously we have been working with Little Birds.
Right.
We've got, so for the 6th of August, we've got the Jamaican Independence Day party. Great event, steel pan, a couple of speeches, some DJs. It's going to be a real good event.
It's going to be awesome.
And yes, essentially it's like celebrating 60 years of Jamaica being an independent country.
Yep.
I think last time I was there, I ordered 3 orders of jerk chicken and ate all of it, and
Yeah.
I did not have a single regret. Not one.
I'm not
And
having.
then I had the plantains.
Yeah.
The
And the free music and free entertainment and free food. I mean, free food, guys, for the whole evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, go down and get you some.
It's so good.
Yeah, so that's going to be at Three Little Birds out in Johnsonville. I don't have the address, but we'll keep you updated because there's going to be some stuff. Yeah, we're going to have Free Simon and Lisa back on the show.
Yeah.
A couple weeks before it happens, just kind of talking about.
Yeah, we're going to get them in a week before, not on the day. Okay,
just,
cool.
Yeah, talk. Doesn't just we want to kind of talk about like what this is kind of means from a Caribbean standpoint. Like what are those kind of recollections? What are those important things about Jamaica over the last 60 years that have changed?
And there's a lot of action going on in Jamaica at the moment, isn't it? About moving away from the crown.
Yeah. So that was one of those things that came up. Especially it was around Prince William and Kate Middleton's visit.
I was like Barbados did their independence thing, so maybe a lot of other people are thinking like.
Well, I hope whatever happens that when they go through this independence, any Karens in the environment, just stay far away. I had a Karen moment, and I just want to tell Karens in Wellington, I am not the one. All right, I am not the one.
You know I'm with fuck with Leah.
So Karen, stay away from any good times happening. We don't need it.
Yeah.
PSA.
Moving right along.
Moving right along.
So that's everyone's week's been. So obviously that's the main comment. So Leah's obviously battling.
I was shell shocked. I had to write it all down to my friend just in case something jumped off.
It's like a surreal moment. It's like, wow, I thought this only happened in like videos on Facebook.
You think it's only TikTok, but then it's not. And then you're faced with a wild Karen, and you're like, am I supposed to pull out a Pokeball or something? She's coming at the attack.
Coming at me with an umbrella. No, not today. Not today.
Anyway. Karen wants to babble.
Yeah.
Okay. How about everyone else? What's everyone else been up to this week?
Well, actually, it's been medical all this week for me.
Yeah.
Just trying to make sure that at 35 I make it to 40, that kind of thing. But other than that, lots of walks, hung out with my friends, watched some new Netflix series, and discovered the have you seen that really cool TikTok of those two Indian twins throwing down? Somebody must have.
I think
right?
I'll go to TikTok.
My point is I got introduced to Bollywood rap, Bollywood hip hop, and Bollywood metal, and I'm a convert. Thank you very much. Yes, please just scoop
Good,
more
check that
scoops,
out.
please.
Yeah.
How's about you, Paida?
My week's been pretty good. It's just working, just another public servant trying to do her bit. And yeah, literally that's all I do. Work.
Let me see you work.
Yeah,
work.
get my money. Yeah, but otherwise really chill. Excited to come and hang out with you guys, and just another friend, another fan.
Because I'm like
Awesome.
relatively, when I say relatively, like doing this, been on with the Blackhouse for a year, but you were like pre-date. You're like early Blackhouse. Like,
way. No,
Yeah, before
Leah
film.
told me, they said no, it's not that long ago. But like I said, COVID
Yeah.
makes it feel like it was 17 years ago. But when it, a few, maybe a year or two. Yeah. So
21, I think.
I've just been a really long
22,
fan who likes to come and do a friend of the show who visits.
Yeah.
So today I was like, hey, let me come along and
hang out.
Yeah, have a yarn.
And talk about dating in New Zealand.
I get to learn
subject.
because, like I told you, it would be a very short episode if it's focusing on me.
Where would you like to start, Nanny?
Okay. Well, I mean, and so you and I are both looking.
Yeah.
I have an extensive dating history. I was with my ex-husband for 15 years, so I have been in a relationship, but now I'm out and looking again. Meanwhile, Eddie is in a relationship, so he can talk. So this is like the ghost of past, the ghost of present, and the ghost of future. So for you, it's like we're trying to figure out like what we want, like what we've got and what it used to be.
Well, do start.
What do I want? Oh my gosh! So I learned yesterday that I'm looking for a big, tall, strapping young man who's nerdy / heavy metal enough to handle me. And nerdy enough to get me and heavy metal enough to handle me. And I learned yesterday that Atlanta, Georgia has a big and tall, like formal, fancy tomorrow in Atlanta, and I'm like, how do I get to Atlanta in 24 hours?
Well, that taking
what would we be like? Okay, good. So here to LA is like 14 hours.
Yeah,
so like,
right?
and LA to Atlanta's probably
Yeah.
like 6 to 8 maybe.
Probably like a $10,000
It's doable
ticket.
Yeah, we can do this.
Yeah, we can. I know, like somebody
crowd
give me there,
fundraiser.
right? Like, give me there. That said, the Facebook group that I saw, I'm back on the market for the first time in 15 years. Like, as of maybe 2 years. Like 3 years ago, and I've dated a couple of different people, and I have had like. Some of them I'm like actually still heartbroken because I'm like they live in the States and then there was COVID and all sorts of things and I'm like Romeo and Julieting from like several continents away, and now I'm stuck here because I've got an 8-year-old, and I'm trying to navigate the entire dating scene through COVID, an 8-year-old. Like all sorts of mental health issues, going to therapy, and like just like the whole thing crashing down on you. And on one hand, you're like, I would not wish me on anyone, and then on the other hand, you're like, maybe that's half the problem is that I've been alone for like a year and a half.
Well, I think also a thing is around like New Zealand is so far away from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So if you have like a very specific niche market that you're looking for, you know what I mean? It would be very, a bit tight. That's
It's like being an Eskimo in the Sahara.
It is.
Wow.
It is.
I don't know what that took something in me, but I don't know. So that's that's such a different like kind
I'm
of
looking
season.
for this like incredible there's when I was a teenager, I had no question. Like I really was just like I'm here for the experience. If I vibe you, that's all I need, right? Like and that was all that mattered to me, and that was a wonderful way to live as a teenager.
Yeah.
And then I had a child, and I was like, oh, you know what? Actually, I have a checklist of things I need you to be if we're gonna have babies, specifically.
Oh wow.
And then the last time we did this, talking about dating in New Zealand, Leah couldn't even leave
the event.
You couldn't even leave the event. You got snapped up by a whole bunch of women who were like, we need to talk.
We need to talk
We
about
need to talk
dating
about
in New
dating.
Zealand.
Oh. okay.
Dating
So
a while
do tell
back.
her which event was it?
It was the caramel and chocolate event.
There's
and-
a caramel and chocolate event.
Yeah, it's run by a couple of women. That's Kalia and Mary Lou.
Okay.
And they're both out of the country at the moment.
Okay.
They were going to come. They want to come in and
Yeah.
have this discussion too. But they also do networking, so people can meet one another. They have singles nights and stuff. And I was like, you do singles nights? Like, I was
That's
like
so cool.
blown away, you know. And because there's not that much out there for us. I don't
So
think.
this is specifically for black.
No, it's not.
It's for
No,
different
no,
kinds.
they're
Yeah.
quite open. But
Yeah.
they're Kalia's Jamaican
Yeah.
and Mary Lou is Kenyan,
Okay.
German. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, Kenya, gosh, she was gorgeous.
Mm.
Like, so
But
that's-
they'll be back soon.
Yeah, they'll be
Yeah.
back. So like, what I learned, like what I've learned since being single is like, I was like, oh yeah, I've never really had much issues finding men. But if I'm coming out of a relationship with my long-term, like high school, like best friend, I don't want it. I don't want anything less than that. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm gonna start again, I now have this big list of things that I want, and I kind of refuse to back down because
That's
it's
a
not. If it's not my childhood sweetheart, he better be good.
Yeah, no, I mean they always say that's a good start. You know, you need to, if you have an understanding of what you're looking for, that way you can,
Yeah.
I think for me it's quite interesting because it's very nuanced. Because I, you know, for me, like my faith is a really big part of my life. Like, you know, being Christian, and so like there's a lot of kind of my kind of what I'm looking for is also quite shaped by that.
Yeah.
And then also like being Zimbabwean and coming from a family of like I have a lot of like men and like a lot of like brothers and like really cool, and I have a very big family. So for me, that whoever I'll bring to that, boy, you better
Yeah.
Know how to handle yourself.
and so it's like but I'm a really open person to different kinds of people, so it's not like I'm very specific to say, but my values and the things that are really important to me is the things that I can't budge on, like, so
Yeah.
I can relate to what you're saying to say I have a specific understanding of
Yeah.
it. So for me it's more like I'm really interested in meeting different kinds of people, but I already know what I'm looking for, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like I'll be like, you hear it, you kind of trying to eliminate as you go, that kind of situation.
Yeah.
So I was joking, I was like, I'm holding additions. You know how like because they're on their cows. Yeah.
No, sorry, I hear you. Like, oh no, the role is already picked. We've got the script. Like this.
Not so. That sounds a bit scary. Like someone's like, I'm gonna come and meet this prescription of a person, but no, it's more like. I'm just somebody. It's like I always think of the idea like I've invested a lot in myself. My family has invested a lot. So I think it's maybe I don't know if it's like a Zimbabwean or like an African thing.
I think it's an African
an
thing.
African thing where your like relationships are not just about you.
Yes.
It's about like
Yeah.
what the whole community pretty much. Because I think about how like you know like we're all so connected, and we you know you support the entire family, so your relationship is important to the whole family.
Yeah, for the whole family.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is that when I was coming into it, like I said, I had so little expectations. I was like, if I vibe you, that's good enough. Like, what you're saying is exactly how I'm starting to feel now, which is like, oh, you know, I really love my I don't know what you call them, ex-mother-in-law. You know, like I loved my ex-husband's family, but it was definitely like. You didn't feel that sort of gelling of two families coming together to create a
That's
new world.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
everything.
and now that I know the value of that, like now that I know, like now that I've lived through not having quite had that, I'm like, no negotiation. It has to really feel like two worlds coming together to create like a place where together where you're going to bring not just one child, where you or probably already have a pool of children, and you're just flinging your child into like the you know what I mean, like the little in Hawaii you call it like a little keiki pool, you know, like but just like there was already. We are collectively working so hard to build the next generation. There's already like a foundation for that. You don't have to start from scratch.
Yeah. What about you? You doing this?
Me?
Guy's perspective. Guy's perspective.
I don't know. It's not like I definitely feel like it was. I don't know, like it last because I've been with my girlfriend probably a year and a half. Yeah, probably about a year and a half.
Yeah, she's like, you better say that right.
I know. No, I'm just trying to work out the dates. No, but yeah, it's been interesting. Like I guess it's been interesting hearing, and I guess like again looking at from like some of the ways in which I've kind of grown up and the ways I've kind of thought about and approach kind of relationship, and obviously working out that idea of how you do kind of like shift and like move and like I guess kind of try and build something together. I've been finding that reduction, and it's been a really nice process, and the other sets had its ups and downs, but like it's been nice kind of working out that kind of space. Like we moved in together like 2 months ago.
Okay.
And that's been and that's been really fun because it's just like those things are suddenly going from like even like we used to live like literally 2 minutes apart, but even now it's like okay, instead of that we don't live, you know, there's no distance.
Yeah.
So
And so like, but not in like a there's no distance. Like in the UK, even that's like a different dynamic from like when like you know we come out we'd cook at each other's flats or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
So like now it's like oh we're just cooking together.
Together in the same
Oh,
kitchen.
nice.
Yeah.
Would you say, like, I'm very curious about this now. Would you say that there is a dating scene in New Zealand? Because I never ever thought New Zealand really had a dating scene or culture like America does. Like I've never like I think in the old days. In the old days. Okay, the 70s, right? Long ago. Yeah. You know, like it was kind of like the people that you saw end up together
Yeah.
were actually the people that went to school together,
Yeah.
or they lived in the same street,
Yeah.
or something, you know, something like that. I didn't really see, thing and so-and-so's dating thing, and she's also dating this, like the choices.
Yeah.
I
I
never
don't
saw the
think-
options that they have in the States. Like
I've
you could be
dated both.
dating and
I've dated both here and in the States, and it is night and day. I can't walk down the street in the States without black men trying to give me their numbers. And you know what? I miss it. I want to go back. Like, whereas in New Zealand, I honestly feel like, you know, that episode of Futurama where the big, like, ogre women want snoo snoo from Fry.
Yeah.
That's how I feel here.
Yeah.
Like, I have to find a man and, like, club him across the head and drag him back to
Yeah.
my cave. Which is, like, I'm not used to, like, I in the States, you do not have to be on the offensive as a woman. You never do. It's just a non-quantity.
You know what? It reminds me. I actually do think that, like, it depends if you're kind of more like Kiwi guys. They're not like forward.
Yeah.
no.
Or some African guys that I've met, it's like they are forward, but
Very.
like the men ain't looking for commitment. And you know what I said? I said my family want their cows, so I don't really know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you a funny story. When I was in Tanzania, there was this, I was there for a year visiting with my family, and there was this guy that used to come and bring chickens all the time. And then my sister took me to the side one day and she goes, he wants to date you. And I said, why do you say that? Because that's why he's bringing the chickens. And I'm like, he better fucking bring a car. Because I ain't going with no dude for a chicken. Like, what the hell?
Hey, I don't know what the Tanzanian character, you know what I mean? So that's
And like, I don't know if my sister was like taking the piss, but she could have been. But it was just like, hell no! Like every time he turned up, I'd hide in the room. I don't want
Yeah,
any
this
part
could have
of
been
it.
a different story for you guys. You could have had somebody go visiting you in Tanzania. Boy, you let us down.
That is actually true. I have noticed that like continental African men, they are unambiguous with their affections.
Yeah.
And whilst I will say I'm like, no, I feel like I have to drag him out, that is not true with continental African men here. Like I have not experienced that. But usually the continental African men here who come on to me, I think that they misjudge my age and they're like, I'm 20 years your senior, but I just expect you to say yes. And I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
sorry? 10 years is good. I like 10 years my senior. 20 years and I'm a bit, okay.
Well, but are you guys sticking in kind of the pool of like only Africans or only...
When it comes, I mean, I'm quite unambiguous about that. When it
Yeah.
comes to preferences, I mean, like, yeah, I prefer my own men.
Yeah.
But I'm not specific to like Tanzania. I'm kind of like Pan-African in that sense.
Liberate.
Yeah, I'm very liberated in that sense. I just can't. I think a lot of that goes down to like your own experiences. Probably influences how you think about those decisions later in life. But I mean, like, I'm single. And I'm quite comfortably, like, I'm sort of like, yeah, I'm comfortably single. I'm cool. Like, I'm cool with that.
But you're open to someone was coming with maybe
Well,
a cow,
yeah.
but chicken.
Yeah, a little bit more than chickens.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like obviously, if I'm like gonna stick to for me, I'm very open. So like I always joke. I love all of God's creations.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But who am I to limit the world? But I think if it's kind of gets quite complicated when you because for me, like I'm the oldest girl, and I don't know if I don't know. It's like for black girls, it's just big. It's like a law for us because it depends. Even some people, if they still practice like the whole dowry thing, or which it's for me, I used to be like, why would we do this? But now as I've gotten older, it's just a really important fraction of our culture that is a respect thing.
And that's across the lot.
So then it's kind of so it's like I think a lot of it's more about I want to keep myself and my culture and my identity, but then I also realized like New Zealand's pretty small.
And the scarcity issue.
The scarcity issue. That's what you know what I might just need to go on a world tour just to meet different countries.
Funny you said that. Because I actually have spoken to other women who have said that's exactly why I do that. Because there's, go on a world tour because there's nothing here. We're not importing single men. We're not importing, if you've got the niche market, we're not importing single African men or Black Diaspora or whatever. We're not importing them. I mean, we literally import on those work visa things. It'll be family, right?
There's some skilled visa things like for specific kind of low shortage, like if you're like an engineer.
But we don't like specifically go, oh look, we've got X amount of African women or black women in New Zealand who really want to date men of similar backgrounds. Can you please bring some more?
Listen, if someone starts a WhatsApp group,
I mean, so dating in America, you do not have to do that. Black men will make it clear that they like you, and if you like them back, you say yes. Dating in New Zealand, I'm not even sure if it's that we don't have single men. I just think that the culture is so insanely different. Like, my ex-husband, he is white. He's Scottish, of all like his mom's from Glasgow, right? So when I say, I'm looking for a black man, what I'm really trying to say is when I first started dating, I dated someone who was so very different from me that I actually have very little experience dating somebody who's like me. But I myself am a unicorn. You don't get very many like 188 centimeter black women who like heavy metal and anime. Like there's not a lot like me. And then so if I'm trying to find somebody who's like me, I better go home because it's not.
I always hold faith. I always hold faith. There's a way.
Me and some of my girlfriends back in the day, we used to think about the Black Star liner and the one that took everybody back to Africa, and we just go,
Didn't they go bankrupt?
we need a Black Star liner just to come to New Zealand. Like that's it. Just come on down to New Zealand. And then I went to Australia and was in Perth when all the soldiers came in. And I got on the phone to her and I said, the Black Star liner comes to Perth. God damn it. God damn it. They're everywhere.
All right, so what we need to coordinate is we need to get the time schedule of the Black Star liner and then get all of us on a plane to Perth. And then we'll be there and then we'll just have dating ratio and then they can go and we can all just figure it out from there.
And I saw people with Afro Nation. I was like, there's a lot of events that have been happening. We just live on the wrong side of the world.
Exactly.
The last guy I really dated who I just had a blast with was about 10 years my senior. He was a black guy from Maryland, Baltimore, and we dated for quite a long time. I mean, technically we would still be dating had it not been for COVID. One of the things I was really trying to do was uproot my daughter before she really got some deep roots here and bring her to be. There was a part of me was like, are you sure you really want to bring your daughter to Baltimore? This is a scary ass place. But then there's another part of me was like, are you sure you want to raise her so far away from her own culture? That's scary too. So I'm with this guy. Ron, if you're listening, I love you still. So this was this really super wonderful relationship, but this is kind of my first real relationship with a black guy, and I will say it was a completely different experience to my ex-husband or any other guys who I've dated here in New Zealand. And now I feel very much like my daughter is developing roots here.
Yeah.
and I'm stuck here. And there in America is 101 black guys who are like, we miss you, we love you, here's our number.
Yeah.
Like, you know, our precious anime queen. Like, we miss your heavy metal. But like, now, but here's where I am. So I'm like, what do I do?
Well, what do you think is a potential solution, or what is a coping mechanism for this situation we find ourselves in New Zealand, where if you're not expansive in the way, and you're more niche, and you want to date like men of similar backgrounds, what do you think is the solution to this? Do we all just have to become, if we want to be in a relationship, because for me it's like changing my preferences is almost like, I've often thought, I can't suddenly like women when I'm heterosexual. And for me, the preferences are the same. I'm not gonna, it doesn't change. Like, it literally doesn't change. And so, you know, like, what do you think is a way forward in that way?
I'm not gonna lie. Literally, I had, like, at the beginning of COVID, I was like, it's not gonna be that long. You know, my whole life is packed up to go see this guy. Right?
Okay, all right.
Like, literally, that's exactly where I was. I was like, this is just a little while. My whole life's packed up. I'm gonna go and see him. It's gonna be great. And then, so I'm still like, I'm waiting. And I'm waiting, and he's waiting, and we're both waiting, and then the waiting goes, and then it goes, and then I was like, look, please don't wait for me, like, you don't wait for me, because I have a voracious appetite, and I may not wait for you, and like, you know, and so we have this conversation, and he's just like, okay, whatever, I'm still here, but, like, I hear what you're trying to say, and then, so here we are 2 years on, right, like, and I'm just like, okay, what do I do? What I did? Therapy, because it, like, broke my heart, like, and I have been sort of mourning that relationship, except it's not quite over, except maybe it is, except, like, and now I'm trying to see the dating scene, and I know that, like, and at first I was like, oh my god, this is awful, and now I know so many women who are in, like, basically some form of an identical situation. Like,
what about you, Paida?
I was holding hope. I think for me, I don't know. I think it's just about you getting more life experiences. Like, focus. I still just choose to focus on myself, and I just believe that, like, when it's meant to be, it'll happen. But I definitely am more leaning towards, like, leaving New Zealand, exposing myself to different situations. Not specifically because of a relationship, but just the idea about not trying to do it because I'm trying to find somebody, but it just isn't, like, I think it's just good to meet different kinds of people. If you want to expand the pool, it's better to kind of do it in, like, other parts of the world, because if you stay here,
I mean,
I look at you and I see that you could not walk down the street. And, like, if you were in, like, New York, you couldn't make it 1 block. Like, not 1 block.
Guys.
It's the same as, like, Tanzania was the same, and it actually really threw me, because I was always used to being invisible. And so, like, I'm walking, you know, down the main streets downtown Dar es Salaam, and guys are just approaching you from everywhere, trying
Excuse
to
me, miss.
and give you their number and give me a call, and I ended up walking back to the bus and putting my cap down, and putting my cap over my face, and turning my backpack around to the front of me, and just, like, saying, I just want to go home. I'm not used to this. I'm not used to this attention, because
so we are saying, New Zealand guys, do you see your role models here in Africa? You need to step up that. Because I think it's more of quite a passive culture of, like, where it's like people meet each other at school. So many of people I went to university or high school with, they're, like, married to people that they met in high school and all that kind of stuff, and it's just like, that's good, but I think of myself more of an international kind of gal. It depends what you're aiming for in life.
And I think, like, I had the exact same experience of you. I grew up in Hawaii, where there was just none of that forwardness, and I grew up in New Zealand, where there was none of that. And then the time I went to Baltimore, I went to California with my family, and at one point, like, I got chased 4 blocks by these 2 black men who were like, I'm getting on a plane in, like, literally a half an hour. Calm down. They're like, no, I'm gonna get your number. I, like, that was my first experience actually having, like, you know, that strong attention, and, like, my first response is like, what the hell, do they want to kill me, or they're stalking me? But, like, I got used to it, and now I'm back here in New Zealand, and the thing for me is, I don't want somebody who doesn't want me that badly. Like, I don't want anyone who wouldn't, like, run down the street being like, Miss, you dropped your handkerchief, and I can turn around and have a meet cute with some random handsome stranger. Like, I don't want that anymore.
I was thinking, I do have a question that I kind of want to that I think that would lead quite well into, but I want to go for some music first and then come back to that.
Good stuff.
Yes.
Alright, so first up we have Breeze, Madonna, and Governor, and then we have Never Forget from Somebody Great. Is that new music?
Nice, new music.
I'm all set.
And what else? Who else we got in here?
Samper, if you're listening, love you. Love your work.
Please come on the show.
Please come on the show.
Cool, I think we'll start with that there. And we'll play Oya from Janina Nana. And we are back upon Blackhouse 106.1 FM. That was Never Forget from Somebody Great. I'm stoked. There's new music from Samba.
Really awesome.
So I guess the question that I guess like based on kind of that idea of from what you were saying in terms of, and the idea of like obviously being in international situations where you have black men being very, very forward and that sort of things, but also the kind of overwhelmed, the aspect of feeling overwhelmed by that and that sort of things. How does that kind of clash resolve in that? Because I know like you see a lot of kind of men's spaces that go, oh, you can't just flirt with anyone anymore. Because obviously how do we strike that balance between
respectful.
Between that kind of level of that kind of forwardness without it being overwhelming, without it falling into that kind of space.
Well, here's a quick one. The minute she looks like she's super not interested, stop. Like, if she looks like it's, like, making her curl into herself, and, you know, someone like me, if I get catcalled, I'll usually reply, disgusting, yuck, stop. But if, like, somebody's like, excuse me, miss, miss is a perfectly fine way to say, you know, I am interested in you, are you available?
Yeah.
And, like, there's been maybe, like, a couple of different guys in New Zealand who's done that to me, and I've gone on a date with each of them. Not necessarily like anything more, but I've absolutely gotten to know them because they're coming at me from I'd like to get to know you, not bend over. Like, which is I'm like no, I'm not a walking vending machine. You're not gonna stick a coin in, right? Like so it's not about it's like the line between excuse me, miss, and hey you is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what? I have to, that's really, there's two extremes.
Yeah.
But I think what I do notice that society has probably changed so much, and there is, it's so, there is, I can understand, I think for me, somebody I've grown up with, like a lot of boys in my family, that kind of thing. And it's like, how do you it's about how do you interact with, like, you know, when you're dating and engaging with women, and what I would advise to guys is like this, like the whole thing of being really respectful and looking at the idea of just like you know, like you're another person that I want to just get to know and just to like have like I think focusing on like knowing people and just kind of like, and I think people also need to learn how to take rejection well, because I think that also contributes to the culture, because just because a girl says no to you, 99% of the time it's got nothing to do with you.
Yes.
So I would say invest in knowing yourself and being like, you know what, you win some, you lose some, have a great day. And just like, and I think that this entitlement culture as well.
I'm not like, what is that?
Like, if, you know, I don't know what it is. You know, there's a lot of social harms out there, or maybe social media, or how people are being introduced to relationships anymore, and people don't really talk to each other about like, hey, or like, you know, I don't know if like men have like conversations with their sons or their daughters about like, this is how we should interpersonally engage with each other, or women talk to their sons and their daughters. Do you know, because back in African culture, I have this whole thing, or Zimbabwean culture, of your auntie would be like, Paida, this is what to expect, this is how to, or the you know, the uncles would be talking to the sons and being like,
and then you got the Kiwi aunties that are like, come on, let's get the tequila and blah blah blah, like they ain't teaching that stuff.
Like, it's funny you ask, and I've like considered it, but it's almost like it clicked right then. I think that the entitlement culture is actually, I've heard even this as a theory, it's not just a culture of entitlement, it's actually a culture of weak boundaries. And you have a culture of people who have extremely weak boundaries that aren't very entitled, and you'll never get to know because you just didn't notice them. But what you have is a culture of like almost, you know, sharks in a guppy pool who have never encountered another shark, and so they're super entitled with you because they just expect you to bend over because they're not used to you holding a boundary.
Sis, I'm just thinking if anyone ever came to me and said, "Yeah, that's really interesting." Like what? So, like no, continue. But I'm just.
But you see what I mean? Like I can name as many people I can name are entitled. I can name a lot of friends of mine who have like really weak boundaries where I have to be the one who like, "Are you okay with this?" And they're like, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine." Like, no. This is clearly not fine. So I'm the one like forcing them to hold healthy boundaries, but that ends up being on my shoulders. And for I have way more people in my life like that, probably for obvious reasons, than I have people who are like super entitled.
Right.
And so I don't actually think, like, we have this culture of entitlement is something that I think a lot of people are saying, but I actually think it's the opposite, which is that we have a culture of very weak boundaries.
Yeah.
And that some people capitalize on that because they can, because it's all over.
Yeah, like I think, I see what you, because I've seen that a lot where people just end up taking advantage of people.
Especially in the dating scene, actually.
Yeah.
If I was going to like point to something in Kiwi dating that I've seen, is that like Kiwis as a general rule are very reserved and soft-spoken, except when they're not. And what that means...
When they're drunk.
Yeah, except when they're not, when they're really, really not. But I actually think that plays into almost like a cycle. Like you'll get like, okay, cool, I'm being super reserved and submissive until I snap I'll use alcohol to rev me up to do all the things that I needed to do when I was just being submissive.
Yeah, the culture of binge drinking.
And then I'll be ashamed of myself and I'll go back down.
Yeah.
And so like you've got this like cycle of people who are like, and not necessarily there's a type which is A and there's a type which is B. It's like there's cycles of A and then B, which A is the most dominant.
Yeah, I think maybe from what I'm hearing is the idea of like people don't really talk about exactly what they're looking for, not looking for, and what they is acceptable to them.
There's a lot of talk. Okay, this is going back a while. There's a lot of talk. What I remember, especially among women, about, and this is like I really hate this stuff about like how they can get this guy over this girl.
Oh yes.
There's a lot
As if
of
that
that.
has ever worked.
Huh?
That was what I saw a lot of back in the day. Like, there's a guy, he's with somebody else. How can I get that guy away from that girl?
Yeah.
Wellington was famous.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I find interesting, like that idea of like people not being very clear about it more, because I wonder, because that's one of the things that like I struggle with sometimes, is sometimes being like, I'm a person who I have values, like I have things but that are important to me, but they're never these kind of solid concepts.
Yeah.
They're always very nebulous. So like, it's one of those things where like, you know, when people say, you know, that family is a real big value for me, I find sometimes, and you know, I find that sometimes, and this is, you know, work settings as well, like when people talk about like, what are the values of what we want to embody, I'm just like, I don't think like that, and that's really hard. And do you think that, is it sort of that people, and especially guys, are in positions where they don't know, or is it one of those things where it's those, how are we trying to break down, like, is it thought patterns or thought processes in New Zealand?
I want to take that one because I was born in America, raised in New Zealand, went back to America, living in New Zealand. As an American, I have extremely firm opinions. As a New Zealander, I do not. As an American, I have extremely loud boundaries. As a New Zealander, I do not. And I find that like that thing I was saying about that cycle, it was something I noticed in myself, and then like sort of talked to people and found that they had the same experience. And it's, so when you say like I do other people, I'm like, the New Zealander in me has soft boundaries because that's how I was raised. The American in me knows exactly what she wants because she's an American. She's gonna make it happen, you know, like. And so I think that it is actually a little bit cultural and a little bit of a cultural affectation.
Yeah, because obviously, Paida, you kind of mentioned that that was one of those things, like you saying, like coming from that sort of things and knowing that kind of that faith or how like family. And sort of thing come into it.
Like I think for me, I don't know, like I think I've just grown up with a lot of like values and kind of being really like a big part of my family. And so it just is as simple as like you know, like we value like, you know, our faith, but we value like the idea of like growing intergenerational, like supporting each other, like you know, growing intergenerational wealth, or like growing for your family, like you know, if I win, it means the rest of my village wins, like things like that. And I think it's because of the environment that you grow up in that shapes you. But I think it's also important to go on a journey of figuring out, like, just because you didn't grow up with it, just because you haven't seen it, because you have to think, what do I actually want out of life? And I think relationships are really good dynamics where it's not always just about like a dating relationship, but like friendships or whatever you expose yourself to, as ways to understand, what do I actually want to leave in the world, what exactly, and I think relationships are good because, like, for some people, you brought a family into the world, and your generations keep going and going and going, and that's really beautiful as well. But also, like, it's a journey of understanding, and I think the big thing is like, what do you want to leave behind? And
Exactly.
I
I think like the big shift for me since starting therapy really is like, I thought I knew what I wanted, but like actually having to go back into an introverted soft space and then come back out to say I want this. I think what you're getting at like kind of clicked to me. Here we are in the social media generation, right? And social media is normalizing different things for what we would want.
Yeah.
But people, like, whether you want it or not, you probably want what you grew up with, like what was modeled to you.
Yeah.
And I think that there might actually be right now in history, like almost like a schizophrenic break between I want what I see on social media and TV, and I want what I grew up with.
Right.
And so like and I would even
Depends on
say,
what you grew up with.
yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like psychology would say that even if it was awful, you still kind of want it.
Yeah.
Like even if you're like, no, I'll never do it like my parents do, and then like you see people end up
And
exactly
you end up with somebody exactly like it.
yeah. And so you're not consciously wanting that, and I think that we're being encouraged to want better things, but not quite addressing the nature of the want.
I wouldn't say it's a want. I think it's a familiarity.
Yeah.
And so like you may end up with people that are familiar.
Yeah.
Have familiar traits to something that, like, yes, absolutely, I think, like, I've experienced that. I don't think it's a want.
Yeah.
I think you want to be as far away from that sort of energy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's all you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
It was like, okay, like I did spend some time living on the streets in Auckland. I was a street kid for a period of time and lived rough. When I left, I always gravitated back to the people that were there.
Yeah.
And I actually had to leave the city to get away from it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they were all I knew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh,
And I think it's that familiarity that you get drawn into, and I think like what's happening now with a lot of people talking about dating and talking about, you know, what they want for themselves and for their lives is that, first of all, you're talking, and then the other thing is that you're actually starting to evaluate these issues, which before, I think we didn't have these discussions and we just acted on instinct.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Like, it's so funny that you should
Yeah.
say that. Like, we were talking before, like, you're like, oh, I've lived a very sheltered life. For me, I've had, like, really huge cycles of being extremely sheltered and then dropped into dropped in with the sharks, and then going back to being extremely sheltered. And I think the thing I'm hearing you say, I had the same experience of often I find myself, like, I'm like, oh, I want this, I want that. But what I'm drawn to is two exactly opposing types of men. I like really safe, really soft, really sweet men. And like for me, like I could almost not resist. And then on the other end,
Embodied in Superman's body.
yeah, like a lot of the guys that I date, they're often shorter than me. Like,
Right.
or the longest I will date men who are like super broad, super tall, super macho. But I only tend to settle down with like the really soft, sweet ones who are like super soft spoken. I'm like, no, I'll help you. Yeah.
What about you? What about you, Paida? What do
Oh,
you
I
think is the
literally,
future?
I was trying to think, oh, what's your ideas? In my head, I was like, oh, Idris Elba and Skip.
Oh, God.
What, the combination?
No.
I don't know.
Like,
I'm just trying to
if they
think
both had a kid together.
No.
If they both had a kid with me.
The contrast of the kind of people that I find interesting.
Yeah.
But then I think I really value the idea of like having a family, because that's what I came from, and that's still really important to me. So I think that's probably like, ideally I'm still aiming in that direction. And I think and I just love the idea of like intergenerational living. So I'll end up one of those people where like I've got my family lives near me, or everybody goes together in the village.
I think that's what I always really wanted, was like, you know, to have family around me, but it didn't, you know, like that wasn't the case. But what I am very protective of my sons. And it doesn't matter how shitty they get with me, I'm always over it. You know, after a certain period of time. TJ will tell you different, because that's just TJ.
I think that's I just want to say, like, I think that so I think a lot of people also don't really know what they mean when they say they want a relationship. Whenever I date troublemaker boys, and we don't last very long, but it's always so much fun, and I'm so fine with that. But
Scorpios.
Shh.
Because they're my troublemaker friends.
Don't you judge me. My daughter's a Scorpio. My mom's a Scorpio. I'm surrounded by Scorpio. I love dating troublemaker boys, but they're trouble, so you have to drop them at some point. And I think that there's this thing where there's a part of me who's like, the older I get, the more I value the concept of somebody who's going to be with me as I build a family, and somebody whose family feels like family, and somebody who can get along with, as you said, my complicated family.
There's just a lot of us.
The question I had before, we've talked about, like, obviously, like, you have brothers, and the idea of like having to like bring like a guy home to them, like, how does that dynamic? What's the gonna feel of that dynamic? Because like I'm the oldest of three, so I have a younger sister and a younger brother, and it's one of those things where I remember like my brother and I used to joke about like, oh, what happens if my girlfriend, my sister brings home a boyfriend? And it's one of those points I was just like, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get like a cricket bat and like and put on my best do rag and like a white singlet like I'm and I'm just gonna sit there and just kind of just stare him down.
That's what TJ does.
But that's weird, because then I said that when I was like 16, 17, and then when my sister did bring her boyfriend home when I was like 22, and she was like, oh, I thought you were gonna do this. I was embarrassed. I was like, nah, like shit, that's weird. No, you do you. Like,
That's so funny. But my brothers are actually PSA. They're actually really lovely people, and no, they just make fun. You just need to know how to I tell them, like, one time I was talking to this guy and he said, oh, let's meet up the next day. Then he stood me up. I went and told my brothers about it. They just laughed. But if you do something to like that, I'm not, you know, my boundaries are disrespected or whatever, like the family gonna come find you. But I think they're very, as long as I'm happy, I would, but I've never tested that to you because I've never done this. I say that now, and then they're gonna turn up something different.
Because I think 2 minutes. Because that was the kind of thing I was, on that kind of sort of thing is like, it's trying to work out for me where a lot of these relationship spaces is how there was like ideas like, and we pass off as jokes, especially for guys. But then how many of those points in time turn weird or toxic? It have that kind of root sometimes.
I think we need to get all the guys in here and have a discussion with them about that, because I definitely think that this is a topic that we can revisit and revisit again, because we're all living in this really unusual environment. As I think it's unusual as far as being of African heritage or from the Black Diaspora. And I think like we need to start having these conversations. So like let's do this. Let's keep doing this, and we'll keep bringing it in.
I have one more question for you as a man, Eddie, and like a question for when the men come in. How do we translate you troublemaker boys into the long-term types?
I don't think you can.
I
think you put them in a boat and send them out to the nearest island.
They belong to the streets.
I feel like it's just one of those things of like, again, it's if again, ultimately it's the whole thing is someone doesn't have some kind of idea of what they want to do, like, or there's not like an idea where that's something like, I think if there's not that, if there isn't like spaces for them to have that self-reflection and improve, right?
People can always change.
People can change, but it's that kind of point of, do people want to change? And that's kind of one of the.
True.
the troublemaker sort of thing, right?
I will say,
Ask him.
I will say, like, it's the troublemaker boys who have my heart. It's just like, but you ain't gonna have my time. Sorry.
Okay,
Right,
so
we're done to about 30 seconds. So
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Alright.
Alright, let's have this
Peace,
conversation
love,
again.
yoga.
Anybody who wants to come in and talk about dating while black in New Zealand, just give us a buzz on the Blackhouse and we'll get you in here and knock this one out.
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't sound right.
And that's that. So we're actually launching Blackhouse Nights.
Blackhouse nights,
But
yeah.
this has been the Blackhouse on
On the
106.1
Blackhouse.
FM. We've been Eddie, Nani, Leah, and Paida. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.
Peace.